I had a consultation with a woman today, and as we kind of started the consultation, we kind of started talking about just what the services were. And so at first, when we first started talking, she was just kind of not fully engaged. She was very interested, but not fully engaged, if that makes sense. And so I kind of started with just kind of explaining the services and what they're about. And I intuitively was already answering questions she hadn't asked me yet. And so at that point, it kind of locked her in, and she was fully laser focused. And so going from not engaged to laser focused. And so as we were kind of explaining some of the services, because the thing is what she was kind of explaining is I see many different specialists. And one of the examples that she was seeing was a nutritionist, and the things that she was having symptoms of or having struggles with were actually blood sugar, not an allergy. And so at that time, after we kind of broke it down for her, she realized she wasn't even seeing the right specialist. And so that's kind of what the services are, is life coach and guidance. So it's not one thing, it's case-to-case basis, it's individual, it's whatever you're needing within your journey and your situation. And so in her case, she's seeing multiple different specialists where I am one. And so we kind of uncover a lot of things. And so she had viewed the website, she looked at it, she was like, I'm interested in the mental health and the nutrition. So that's where we kind of started discussing some of the nutrition at first and uncovering what was actually going on with her. So she already realized she's spending money and her time on someone that is not treating her primary cause. And so that's a lot of what I work with, is not your secondary symptom, your primary. A lot of specialists you see treat your secondary symptoms based on whatever you're feeling, your symptoms. And so by doing that, they will treat that, where I work with the primary symptom, what's causing that secondary symptom. And so I dig a little deeper, and that's where we kind of find more of the root cause of what's actually going on with your body health than just your symptoms and your secondary symptoms. And so started with that, and then we kind of moved into the mental health, and that's where she kind of explained, I've been to many different types of therapy. I've been through grief therapy, I've been to talk therapy, and she said that it has not been effective. And I kind of explained to her is because, again, secondary symptoms versus primary, they're working with the projection. So they're working with whatever your thoughts are and whatever the cognitive, the thought process is. And I said, we're going to kind of go a little bit further, and we're going to find out what's causing those thoughts. And so we're going to work again with those primary symptoms. And so with her, we've got kind of a schedule we're going to work with. We were going to start working on meditation. We're going to start working on nutrition and finding the actual cause of what's going on with her health. We are uncovering a lot of things within the inner child. So that's another thing is I kind of explained, a lot of times why regular therapy doesn't work is because they kind of keep you in the past. And so we're going to bring you back to current. And so the way I explained it to her was, we're going to start with the inner child, and we're not just going to talk about the trauma. We're going to find out, and I explained to her a lot of times those traumas are actually purposeful to catapult you forward, and without those traumas, you wouldn't be able to be where you are today. So we brought her back to present. And so I told her we're going to go into that a little deeper if you decide to move forward and schedule. And with that, we uncovered a lot of her inner child work, even without even going into detail. And a lot of it was the inner child kind of affects the subconscious, and so the subconscious has a wound, mother wound, father wound in her case, which is very common with a lot of people. And she was adopted to where she wasn't just having the wounds from the adoptive parents, but genetically having wounds from the maternal parents. And so with that, a lot of the therapy that she had already been through in the grief therapy hadn't touched base on the inner child, which is the first 5 years. And so we kind of explained, and she gave me just a little brief information, and we were able to figure out where her inner child wound was and how it's affecting her conscious, being her subconscious. And so within this 44-minute time frame, we were already able to uncover a lot of what her needs were without even digging into it at all. It was very brief, and so she went from not fully engaged to hyper-focused. And before, we kind of gave some closure because it was getting to be close to our 44 minutes. And we talked about pricing and how we give discounts based on, whether you're a low-income Medicaid or any kind of just low income, basically. We give discounts, and so we talked about pricing and how that works. And so as we're wrapping it up, she's digging a little bit deeper, and it's because she's so hyper-focused on what we were talking about that she didn't realize it was about ready to shut off. And I kind of gave her a little prior warning, but it cut off. And so she immediately emailed me, and she goes, "It just cut out." And I said, "Well, we kind of said a little bit as far as the closure." I said, "But the 44 minutes goes kind of fast." And I said, "But this is where you get a brief start on whether you want to move forward and schedule." And she said, "I would love to schedule." And so my whole thing is, when you find, in my case, a life coach. So I'm not a mental health expert, I'm not a nutritionist, I'm all of it. I work with regulating the nervous system, regulating your emotions, finding the primary cause, not the secondary symptoms. We're going to work with meditation and sleep therapy. We're going to start with her sleep-wake cycle and get her on a regulated basis so her body comes back into homeostasis and harmony. And so with her, it made such a difference, and that's basically what I'm getting at in the video is, when you find the right person, in my case a life coach, that's where the transformation actually happens. It's because you're both energetically in alignment to make that difference in your life. And so that's why in her case some therapists didn't work, some nutritionists, with the allergist when it was actually a blood sugar problem. That's why some of them aren't effective, is because they're not treating your primary and they're not digging a little bit deeper to find out what actually is going on with it. And so that's where, with her booking the consultation, we were able to figure out in alignment what was best for her, and we were in alignment. And so in 44 minutes, we already started the transformation of her life. And so when you find that right person, that's when the magic really truly happens.